The pain in Shazan's chest was unbearable. As darkness engulfed him, he felt his life slipping away. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about Islam, Christianity, and the afterlife. Suddenly, Shazan found himself descending into a realm of unimaginable horror. The air was thick with the screams of the damned, and a sickly red glow illuminated the agonized faces of the souls trapped there. But nothing could prepare him for who he was about to meet, or the three secrets that would turn his world upside down. May 12, 2024 dawned like any other day for Shazan Danish. The former Muslim went about his morning routine, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone, unaware that his life was about to change forever. Shazan had long since left behind his Islamic faith, but the spiritual questions that had led him away from his former religion still lingered in the back of his mind. As Shazan prepared to leave for work, a sudden searing pain erupted in his chest. It was as if a vice had clamped down on his heart, squeezing with relentless force. He gasped, clutching at his shirt as he stumbled against the kitchen counter. The world around him began to spin, colors blurring and sounds becoming muffled. Shazan's breathing grew labored, each breath a struggle against the crushing weight in his chest. His limbs felt heavy, unresponsive, as if they were no longer his own. A cold sweat broke out across his forehead, and he felt himself sliding to the floor, unable to fight against the overwhelming sensations assaulting his body. As Shazan's consciousness began to fade, his mind raced with confusion and fear. Was this what dying felt like? He had always imagined death as a peaceful fading away, but this was anything but peaceful. It was violent, terrifying, and all-consuming. Medical experts often describe near-death experiences as complex phenomena, involving a range of physiological and psychological factors. As Shazan's brain struggled with reduced blood flow and oxygen, it's possible that his perception of reality began to shift dramatically. Some researchers suggest that the brain releases a flood of neurotransmitters in these moments, potentially explaining the vivid and often otherworldly experiences reported by those who have come close to death. Shazan felt himself slipping away, his grip on the familiar world loosening with each passing second. The boundaries between life and death, once so clear and defined, now seemed to blur and shift. He was aware of a strange sensation of movement, as if he were being pulled away from his physical body. In those final moments of consciousness, a realization dawned on Shazan. This was not the end, but rather a transition. He was crossing over into another realm, one that defied his previous understanding of reality. The fear that had gripped him began to give way to a sense of awe and anticipation. As the last threads of his earthly awareness faded away, Shazan found himself fully embracing this new state of being. He had crossed a threshold, leaving behind the world he knew and entering a realm beyond his wildest imagination. And so, Shazan's descent into darkness began. Little did he know that this journey would lead him to confront not only his own beliefs, but also the very foundations of his former faith. The secrets that awaited him in this mysterious realm would challenge everything he thought he knew about Islam, Christianity, and the nature of existence itself. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you die. But for Shazan, death brought something entirely unexpected. As he descended into a realm beyond imagination, he faced a chilling question. What if everything he thought he knew about the afterlife was wrong? The descent was overwhelming yet oddly peaceful. Shazan felt himself sinking deeper into an unfathomable darkness, his memories of life fading like wisps of smoke. The air around him thickened, pressing down with an almost tangible weight. His senses, rather than dulling, seemed to sharpen to an almost painful degree. As he plunged further into the abyss, Shazan's sense of self began to blur. Who was he? Where was he going? The questions swirled in his mind, mixing with a growing sense of dread. This wasn't the peaceful transition he had imagined death might be. Instead, it felt like he was being pulled towards something vast and terrifying. The psychological impact of this perceived afterlife experience was profound. Shazan's mind grappled with the surreal nature of his surroundings, trying to make sense of the sensations assaulting him. Studies have shown that near-death experiences often involve feelings of detachment from one's body and a heightened awareness of one's surroundings. Shazan was experiencing this in full force, his consciousness expanding even as his physical form seemed to dissolve. As he descended deeper, Shazan began to notice shapes moving in the darkness around him. At first, they were indistinct, mere suggestions of form. But as his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he realized with growing horror that he was witnessing scenes of unimaginable torment. Figures writhed in agony, their faces contorted in eternal anguish. This hellish vision aligned chillingly with accounts of hell-like near-death experiences reported across various cultures. The darkness itself seemed alive, a malevolent presence that consumed everything in its path. This wasn't just an absence of light, it was something far more sinister. Shazan recalled descriptions of hell from both Islamic and Christian texts, realizing with growing dread that they paled in comparison to the reality unfolding before him. As Shazan's descent slowed, he became aware of a sickly reddish glow permeating the air. It cast an eerie light on the landscape before him, revealing a realm of unending suffering. To his shock, he recognized figures among the damned, some from religious history, others from his own life. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had entered a nightmarish realm beyond his darkest imaginings. The full horror of his situation began to sink in. This wasn't a dream or a hallucination. Somehow Shazan knew with bone-deep certainty that he had crossed into a place of eternal torment. The air was thick with the screams of the damned, and an overwhelming sense of despair threatened to crush his spirit. As Shazan struggled to comprehend the terrifying reality of his surroundings, he had no idea that his ordeal was far from over. The hellish landscape stretching out before him held secrets that would shake the very foundations of his beliefs. And somewhere in this realm of suffering, an unexpected encounter awaited. One that would challenge everything he thought he knew about faith, salvation, and the true nature of existence. As the hellish landscape unfolded before Shazan, a chilling realization dawned. What if the most revered religious figures weren't where he expected them to be? The truth he was about to discover would shatter everything he thought he knew about faith and redemption. The ground beneath Shazan's feet stretched endlessly, scorched and cracked, bathed in a sickly reddish glow that seemed to emanate from no specific source. This eerie illumination cast long, twisted shadows across the barren landscape, revealing scenes of unimaginable suffering. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and decay, each breath a struggle against the oppressive atmosphere. Shazan's eyes widened in horror as he took in the full scope of this nightmarish realm. Figures that were once human writhed in agony, reduced to mere shadows of their former selves. Some groaned in pain, their voices a haunting chorus of despair. Others were trapped in endless, futile struggles, clawing at the parched earth as if trying to escape their eternal torment. Looming over the suffering souls were demonic creatures, their forms a grotesque mockery of life. These entities seemed to take perverse delight in the anguish surrounding them, their laughter a chilling counterpoint to the cries of the damned. Shazan felt his spirit tremble as he grasped the terrible truth. This was a place utterly devoid of hope, love, and light. As he moved deeper into this realm of suffering, Shazan struggled to reconcile what he was witnessing with his understanding of the afterlife. The Islamic concept of Jahannam and the Christian idea of hell paled in comparison to the reality before him. This wasn't simply a place of punishment. It was a dimension where the very essence of mercy had been stripped away, leaving only raw, unending torment. The psychological impact of this experience was profound. Shazan felt his mind reeling, unable to fully process the magnitude of what he was seeing. Time seemed to lose all meaning here, each moment stretching into an eternity of anguish. He realized with growing dread that in this place there was no respite, no chance for redemption or escape. As Shazan's gaze swept across the hellscape, he began to recognize familiar faces among the damned. To his shock, he saw imams and scholars he had once revered, now bound by chains of flame and shadow. Their punishment seemed tailored to reflect the very teachings they had once preached, a cruel irony that spoke to the nature of their transgressions. The sight of these influential figures trapped in eternal torment hinted at a spiritual hierarchy Shazan had never considered. It suggested that those who had led others astray bore a greater burden in the afterlife, their suffering amplified by the weight of their earthly influence. As this realization sank in, Shazan felt a growing sense of urgency. He knew that what he was witnessing held profound implications for the living, but before he could fully process this thought, something caught his attention. Among the sea of tormented souls, a figure stood out, someone Shazan never expected to encounter in this realm of suffering. This unexpected presence promised to challenge everything Shazan thought he knew about faith, salvation, and the true nature of divine judgment. Amidst the sea of tormented souls, a familiar face emerged, one Shazan had only ever seen in ancient paintings and revered texts. Could it be? The very founder of his faith stood before him, but something was terribly wrong. What shocking truth was about to unravel Shazan's entire belief system? As Shazan's eyes adjusted to the eerie red glow, the figure became clearer. There, among the damned, stood Muhammad himself. The prophet's face was partially hidden, yet unmistakable. His presence in this hellish realm defied everything Shazan had been taught about Islam and the afterlife. How could the messenger of Allah be trapped in this place of eternal suffering? Muhammad's appearance was a stark contrast to the reverent depictions Shazan had grown up with. Here, the prophet's form was bent and weary, his eyes reflecting a profound sadness that seemed to span centuries. The sight of this revered figure in such a state of torment sent shockwaves through Shazan's very being. Everything he thought he knew about his former faith crumbled in an instant. Around Muhammad, demonic entities swirled and jeered. Their mocking laughter echoed through the infernal landscape as they taunted the prophet. "Behold the leader of the misled," they cried, their voices dripping with malice. "See how he guided countless souls down the path of error." Each accusation seemed to weigh heavily on Muhammad, his shoulders sagging under the burden of his past actions. The emotional impact of this sight was overwhelming for Shazan. Here was the man whose teachings had shaped the lives of billions, including Shazan's own family and community. Yet now, Muhammad stood as a testament to the consequences of false doctrine. The cognitive dissonance was almost unbearable, forcing Shazan to confront the possibility that everything he had once held sacred was built on a foundation of lies. As Shazan struggled to process this paradigm-shifting revelation, Muhammad's gaze suddenly locked onto him. The prophet's eyes, filled with a mixture of pain and regret, seemed to penetrate Shazan's very soul. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Despite his own suffering, Muhammad appeared driven by an urgent need to communicate. The air around them seemed to thicken with anticipation. Shazan sensed that he was on the cusp of receiving information that would transcend his own beliefs and potentially impact the lives of millions. The weight of this impending revelation pressed down on him, adding to the already oppressive atmosphere of their hellish surroundings. Muhammad's lips parted, his voice strained but determined. "Shazan," he acknowledged, the simple act of speaking seeming to require great effort. There are truths you must know, secrets that have been hidden for far too long. The prophet's words carried a gravity that demanded attention, promising to unveil mysteries that had been concealed for centuries. As Muhammad prepared to share his crucial message, Shazan braced himself for what was to come. He knew with absolute certainty that the first of these revelations would challenge the very foundations of Islamic belief. The truth that was about to be spoken would ripple through time, potentially altering the spiritual landscape for generations to come. "Jesus," Muhammad began, his voice barely above a whisper. The single word hung in the air, charged with an energy that seemed to make the very foundations of hell tremble. What could the founder of Islam possibly reveal about Jesus that would be deemed a secret? Muhammad's eyes, filled with a mixture of sorrow and urgency, locked onto Shazan's. The prophet's voice grew stronger, though each word seemed to cause him pain. "Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life," he declared, echoing words that Shazan had only ever associated with Christian teachings. The statement hung in the air, its implications vast and unsettling. Shazan felt his world tilt on its axis. Here was Muhammad, the last prophet of Islam, uttering words that directly contradicted the core tenets of the faith he had founded. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming, and Shazan struggled to process what he was hearing. Muhammad continued, his voice gaining strength as he shared the truth he had long hidden. "Without Jesus, there is no salvation," he said, each word seeming to weigh heavily upon him. "I was wrong, Shazan, so terribly wrong." The anguish in Muhammad's voice was palpable, a testament to the magnitude of his revelation. As Shazan listened, transfixed, Muhammad elaborated on the true nature of Jesus. He spoke of Jesus not merely as a prophet, but as the divine Son of God, whose sacrifice on the cross held the key to eternal life. The prophet's words painted a picture of Jesus that was fundamentally at odds with Islamic teaching, yet rang with an undeniable truth. The implications of this revelation were staggering. If Muhammad himself was acknowledging Jesus as the sole path to salvation, what did that mean for the billions of Muslims worldwide? Shazan's mind reeled as he contemplated the far-reaching consequences of this truth. Muhammad's voice grew more urgent as he continued. "The power of the cross, Shazan. I denied it in life, and now I pay the price for that denial." The prophet's words carried the weight of centuries of regret, a stark warning against rejecting the truth of Jesus' sacrifice. As the full magnitude of this revelation sank in, Shazan felt a profound shift in his understanding of spirituality and salvation. The walls of his former beliefs crumbled, replaced by a new awareness of Jesus' central role in divine redemption. It was as if scales had fallen from his eyes, allowing him to see the truth that had been hidden for so long. Muhammad's first secret had shattered the foundations of Islamic belief, replacing them with a truth that transcended religious boundaries. As Shazan grappled with this paradigm-shifting information, he sensed that there was more to come. The prophet's eyes held a knowing look, hinting at further revelations that would deepen this newfound understanding. With the first secret unveiled, the air around them seemed to thicken with anticipation. What other truths had Muhammad been concealing? As Shazan braced himself for the next revelation, he couldn't help but wonder how much more his worldview would be challenged before this extraordinary encounter was over. Just as Shazan thought his world couldn't be shaken any further, Muhammad's expression changed. A look of profound regret crossed the prophet's face as he prepared to speak again. What could possibly be more earth-shattering than the first revelation? The answer, it seemed, would challenge the very foundation of Islamic theology. Muhammad's voice trembled as he began to share the second secret. "Shazan," he said, his eyes filled with sorrow, "Jesus is not merely a prophet, he is the Son of God." The weight of these words seemed to press down on the very air around them, making it difficult for Shazan to breathe. In Islam, the concept of Jesus as the Son of God is considered blasphemous. Muslims believe in Jesus as a respected prophet, but the idea of his divinity is rejected outright. Yet here was Muhammad, the founder of Islam, affirming this core Christian belief. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming for Shazan, who had grown up with the firm conviction that Allah had no sons or partners. Muhammad continued, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "I was wrong to deny Jesus' divine nature. This truth is essential for understanding the depth of his role in humanity's salvation." The prophet's words carried a sense of urgency, suggesting that this revelation was crucial not just for Shazan, but for all who had followed Muhammad's teachings. As Shazan struggled to process this paradigm-shifting information, Muhammad elaborated on the theological implications of Jesus' divinity. He spoke of how this truth fundamentally altered the understanding of God's relationship with humanity. The concept of God becoming man to save his creation was a profound act of love that Muhammad had failed to grasp during his earthly life. The revelation of Jesus as the Son of God opened up new dimensions of understanding about the nature of salvation. It wasn't just about following rules or performing rituals. It was about a personal relationship with a God who loved humanity enough to become one of us. This concept, so foreign to Islamic teaching, began to take root in Shazan's heart. As Muhammad spoke, Shazan felt a strange warmth spreading through his being, even in the midst of this hellish realm. It was as if scales were falling from his spiritual eyes, allowing him to see Jesus in a completely new light. The Jesus he had known as a respected prophet was transforming before him into something far greater, the divine Son of God, the bridge between humanity and the divine. The implications of this truth were staggering. If Jesus was indeed the Son of God, it meant that the entire Islamic understanding of monotheism needed to be re-evaluated. The concept of the Trinity, long rejected by Muslims, suddenly took on new significance. Shazan's mind raced as he tried to reconcile this new information with everything he had ever believed. As Muhammad's words sank in, Shazan sensed that there was still more to come. The prophet's eyes held a mixture of pain and determination, hinting at a final, even more crucial secret yet to be revealed. What could possibly be more earth-shattering than the divinity of Jesus? Shazan braced himself, knowing that whatever came next would likely complete the transformation of his spiritual understanding. The air grew heavy with anticipation as Muhammad prepared to share his final secret. This revelation would challenge not just Shazan's beliefs, but the very foundation of Islamic doctrine. How could a single truth have the power to reshape an entire faith? Muhammad's eyes brimmed with tears as he began to speak. His voice, once filled with authority, now trembled with regret. "Shazan," he said, "I must confess my greatest error. I denied the crucifixion of Jesus, and in doing so, I led billions astray." The weight of this admission seemed to press down on both of them. In Islamic tradition, the crucifixion of Jesus is rejected outright. The Quran states that Jesus was neither killed nor crucified, but that it was made to appear so. This belief has been a cornerstone of Islamic theology for centuries, separating it from Christian understanding of salvation. Muhammad continued, his words heavy with sorrow. "The cross, Shazan, it's not just a symbol, it's the very key to salvation." He explained how he had misunderstood the significance of Jesus' sacrifice, interpreting it as a sign of weakness rather than the ultimate act of divine love. As Muhammad spoke, Shazan felt a shift in his understanding. The cross, once a point of contention between Islam and Christianity, now took on a profound new meaning. He began to see it not as an instrument of death, but as a bridge between humanity and the divine. The prophet delved deeper into the Christian concept of salvation through the cross. He spoke of Jesus' willing sacrifice, taking on the sins of humanity to reconcile them with God. This idea, so foreign to Islamic teaching, began to resonate with Shazan on a deep, spiritual level. It's through his death and resurrection that true salvation is possible, Muhammad said, his voice gaining strength as he shared this truth. The concept of resurrection, another point of disagreement between Islam and Christianity, now seemed to Shazan like the final piece of a cosmic puzzle falling into place. As the full picture of Muhammad's message emerged, Shazan felt a sense of awe and wonder. The prophet he had once revered was now guiding him towards a completely different understanding of faith and salvation. The path to God, it seemed, was not through rigid adherence to religious laws, but through accepting the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. The implications of this revelation were staggering. If the crucifixion was real, and if it truly held the power of salvation, then the entire foundation of Islamic belief needed to be re-evaluated. Shazan realized that this truth had the potential to transform not just his own faith, but the spiritual lives of millions around the world. As Muhammad's final words hung in the air, Shazan felt a profound sense of clarity. The true path to salvation, hidden for so long, now lay before him. Yet even as this realization dawned, a new tension began to build. What would be the consequences of these earth-shattering revelations? How would the world respond to such a dramatic shift in spiritual understanding? The air around them seemed to crackle with unseen energy, as if the very fabric of reality was reacting to these profound truths. Shazan sensed that his journey was far from over. The revelations he had received were just the beginning, and the real challenge lay in what he would do with this newfound knowledge. Just as Muhammad's final words hung in the air, a bone-chilling sound shattered the moment. What sinister forces could possibly dare to interrupt such a profound spiritual encounter? A cacophony of mocking laughter erupted around Shazan and Muhammad, echoing through the hellish landscape. The air, already thick with despair, grew even heavier as demonic entities descended upon the pair. These weren't the cartoonish depictions of evil Shazan had seen in movies or artwork. These creatures were far more terrifying, their twisted faces contorted in malicious glee, their breath reeking of decay. The demons moved with unnatural speed, their forms seeming to flicker and shift in the sickly red glow. They surrounded Muhammad, their clawed hands reaching out to grasp at him. Shazan watched in horror as the prophet, who had moments ago been sharing profound truths, was now being dragged away by these malevolent forces. Muhammad's eyes met Shazan's one last time, filled with a mixture of sorrow and urgency. It was as if he was trying to convey one final message, but before he could speak, the demons pulled him into the shadows. His anguished cries faded into the distance, leaving Shazan alone in the face of this otherworldly threat. The sight of these demonic entities aligned chillingly with various religious traditions that describe demons as malevolent beings thriving on chaos and despair. In many theological concepts, demons are portrayed as tempters and tormentors, existing to lead souls away from truth and salvation. Shazan could see this belief playing out before his very eyes as the demons reveled in disrupting the divine message Muhammad had been sharing. As the echoes of Muhammad's cries faded, Shazan felt the weight of the demons' attention shift to him. Their eyes, burning with an unholy fire, fixed upon him with predatory intent. The air around him grew colder, and he could feel the oppressive weight of their malevolence pressing down on his spirit. One demon, larger and more grotesque than the others, stepped forward. Its face was a nightmarish blend of human and animal features, its mouth filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was like the scraping of metal on stone, sending shivers down Shazan's spine. You think you can escape with this knowledge? The demon hissed, its words dripping with malice. The truth you've learned will be your undoing. No one will believe you. They'll call you a madman, a heretic. The demon's words struck at Shazan's deepest fears. How could he possibly convey the profound truths he had learned in this realm of eternal torment? Would anyone believe his encounter with Muhammad or the revelations about Jesus and salvation? As the demons closed in around him, their laughter growing louder, Shazan felt a sudden shift in the air. A force, powerful and unseen, began to pull at him. The demons' eyes widened in surprise and anger as they realized their prey was slipping away. Shazan's journey was taking an unexpected turn. As he felt himself being wrenched away from the infernal realm, the demon's final warning echoed in his ears. You may leave this place, but the battle for your soul has only just begun. As the demon's threats faded into the distance, Shazan found himself caught in a tug-of-war between two realms. What force could be powerful enough to challenge the grip of the underworld? The answer would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about life and death. A surge of energy unlike anything Shazan had ever experienced coursed through his being, wrenching him away from the infernal plains below. The hellish landscape began to blur, its sickly red glow fading into a swirling vortex of light and darkness. Shazan felt himself hurtling upward, caught in a cosmic current that defied explanation. As he ascended, the boundaries between life and death seemed to blur. Shazan's consciousness expanded, allowing him to perceive realities beyond mortal comprehension. Time lost all meaning in this liminal space, each moment stretching into eternity. The revelations he had received from Muhammad echoed in his mind, their profound truths intertwining with the very fabric of his being. Suddenly, Shazan felt a jolt, as if he had crashed into an invisible barrier. The world around him exploded into a cacophony of sensations. A rush of air filled his lungs, shocking his system back to life. His heart, which had been still, now thundered in his chest with renewed vigor. Every nerve in his body screamed to life, overwhelmed by the sudden return to physicality. As consciousness slowly returned, Shazan struggled to reconcile the profound spiritual journey he had experienced with the harsh reality of his physical form. His mind reeled, trying to process the vast expanse of knowledge and emotion he had encountered in the afterlife. How could he possibly contain such cosmic truths within his mortal frame? Medical science offers some explanations for the sensations Shazan experienced during his resuscitation. The sudden influx of oxygen, the restarting of his heart, and the flood of neurotransmitters released by his brain all contributed to a symphony of physical and emotional responses. Yet these clinical descriptions failed to capture the true depth of Shazan's experience. As Shazan's eyes fluttered open, he found himself staring at the concerned faces of paramedics hovering over him. The familiar surroundings of his kitchen came into focus, a stark contrast to the otherworldly realms he had just traversed. He tried to speak, to share the earth-shattering revelations he had received, but found his voice weak and unsteady. The paramedics worked efficiently, checking his vital signs and preparing him for transport to the hospital. But Shazan barely registered their actions. His mind was still grappling with the profound truths he had learned, the visions of hell that haunted him, and the unexpected encounter with Muhammad that had shaken the very foundations of his beliefs. As he was lifted onto a stretcher, Shazan realized with absolute certainty that he was not the same person who had collapsed in his kitchen earlier that day. The journey he had undertaken had transformed him on a fundamental level. He was alive, yes, but forever changed by his brush with death and the divine truths revealed to him. As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle began to move, Shazan closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of his experience. He knew that his real journey was just beginning. How would he share what he had learned? Who would believe him? And what responsibilities did this newfound knowledge place upon his shoulders? In the quiet of the hospital room, Shazan Danish found himself grappling with a profound transformation. The world around him seemed unchanged. The sterile white walls, the rhythmic beep of medical equipment, the hushed voices of nurses in the hallway. Yet within his mind and soul, a seismic shift had occurred. His near-death experience had torn away the veil between worlds, leaving him forever changed. As he lay in the hospital bed, a startling realization dawned upon him. The path ahead would be far more challenging than the journey he had just survived. How does one reconcile a lifetime of beliefs with a single moment of divine revelation? The Muslim faith that had once been the bedrock of his existence now felt like shifting sand beneath his feet. Shazan's mind raced with the implications of what he had witnessed. The hellish realm, the tormented souls, and most shockingly, the presence of Muhammad himself, all of it defied his previous understanding of the afterlife. But it was the Prophet's revelations about Jesus that truly shook Shazan to his core. The idea of Jesus as the Son of God and the sole path to salvation stood in stark contrast to everything he had been taught. The psychological impact of such a paradigm shift was immense. Shazan felt as if he was standing at the edge of a great chasm, his old beliefs crumbling away on one side, while a new, uncertain future beckoned from the other. Studies have shown that near-death experiences often result in significant shifts in personal beliefs, as individuals confront existential questions and the nature of their faith. Shazan was experiencing this in full force, his entire worldview undergoing a radical reconstruction. As the hours passed, Shazan found himself drawn more and more to the teachings of Jesus. The words Muhammad had spoken in that hellish realm echoed in his mind, each repetition cementing their truth more firmly in his heart. He began to see his survival not just as a medical miracle, but as a divine intervention, a second chance to embrace the truth and share it with others. With this new understanding came a sense of urgency. Shazan felt a deep responsibility to share the messages he had received. The weight of this knowledge pressed upon him, demanding action. How many others were walking the path he had once trodden, unaware of the spiritual peril that awaited them? The thought was almost unbearable. As dawn broke, casting a soft light through the hospital room window, Shazan made a decision that would alter the course of his life. He would embrace Christianity, not just as a new faith, but as a mission. The truth he had learned in the depths of hell would become a beacon of hope for others, guiding them towards the salvation he now understood. But even as Shazan felt a sense of purpose solidifying within him, a shadow of doubt crept into his mind. How would he share this message? Who would believe the extraordinary tale of his journey to the afterlife, and what consequences might he face for challenging the deeply held beliefs of his community? These questions loomed large, but Shazan knew he could not remain silent. The urgency of his revelation demanded action, no matter the cost. As Shazan grappled with these questions, a startling realization dawned on him. His message wasn't just for anyone. It was specifically for the Muslim community he had once been a part of. What would happen when he confronted his former religious brethren with truths that challenged the very foundation of their faith? Shazan knew he had to share his experience and the 3 secrets revealed to him by Muhammad. But as he prepared his message, a wave of apprehension washed over him. He anticipated resistance and disbelief from Muslims who had spent their entire lives devoted to Islamic teachings. How could he convince them that everything they believed about salvation was fundamentally flawed? The key points Shazan wanted to convey seemed almost heretical when viewed through the lens of traditional Islamic doctrine. He needed to explain that Jesus was not merely a prophet, but the only begotten Son of God. This concept alone would be difficult for many Muslims to accept, as it contradicted one of the core tenets of their faith. Shazan also had to emphasize the transformative power of recognizing Jesus as the sole path to salvation, a truth that Muhammad himself had confirmed in the depths of hell. As Shazan contemplated the potential consequences of challenging such deeply held beliefs, he felt a mix of fear and determination. He knew that his message could be seen as apostasy, potentially leading to ostracism from his community or even threats to his safety. Yet the urgency of his revelation compelled him to speak out, regardless of the personal cost. Shazan's mind raced as he considered how to approach this delicate subject. He needed to strike a balance between conveying the gravity of his message and appealing to his audience's capacity for open-mindedness. He decided to begin by sharing his near-death experience in vivid detail, hoping that the authenticity of his account would lend credibility to the revelations that followed. As he crafted his appeal, Shazan felt a growing sense of anticipation. He knew that his words had the power to spark a profound spiritual awakening among those willing to listen with an open heart. He would implore his Muslim brothers and sisters to reflect deeply on their beliefs, to pray fervently for guidance, and to seek the truth with unwavering determination. With a deep breath, Shazan began to record his message. His voice trembled with emotion as he recounted his journey to the afterlife and the shocking truths he had learned. He spoke of the torment that awaits those who deny the truth of Jesus Christ, emphasizing the weight and urgency of his revelation. As he neared the conclusion of his appeal, Shazan's voice grew stronger, filled with conviction and compassion. "My dear Muslim brothers and sisters," he said, "I urge you to take this message seriously. Our eternal destiny hangs in the balance. We must acknowledge our sins, seek forgiveness, and embrace Jesus as our Savior. The path to reconciliation with God lies not in our own righteousness, but in the sacrifice of Christ on the cross." As Shazan finished recording his message, he felt a profound sense of relief mixed with trepidation. He knew that his words would send ripples through the Muslim community, potentially altering the spiritual landscape for generations to come. The broader implications of his message began to come into focus, and Shazan realized that this was only the beginning of a much larger journey, one that would challenge not just Islamic beliefs, but the very nature of faith itself. Shazan's near-death experience had revealed to him the dire consequences of rejecting the truth of Jesus Christ. As he reflected on his journey through the hellish realm, the weight of his newfound knowledge pressed heavily upon him. The stakes, he realized, were higher than anyone could imagine. This wasn't just about personal belief or cultural tradition. It was a matter of eternal significance. The reality of hell, with its tormented souls and demonic entities, haunted Shazan's thoughts. He couldn't shake the image of Muhammad, trapped in that realm of suffering, sharing the secrets he had denied in life. The narrow path to salvation, once a concept Shazan had dismissed, now seemed like a lifeline in a stormy sea of spiritual peril. As Shazan grappled with these profound truths, he found himself examining different religious perspectives on salvation and damnation. The inclusive view that all paths lead to God now seemed naive in light of what he had witnessed, yet the exclusive claim that only one way leads to salvation felt harsh and unforgiving. How could he reconcile these conflicting ideologies with the revelation he had received? Theological arguments for religious exclusivism began to resonate with Shazan in a way they never had before. The words Muhammad had spoken in hell echoed in his mind. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. This truth, once rejected by Shazan and billions of others, now stood as a beacon of hope in a world of spiritual darkness. As Shazan contemplated the implications of his experience, a sense of urgency grew within him. He realized that this knowledge carried with it a profound responsibility. How could he remain silent when so many souls were at risk? The thought of others facing the torment he had witnessed filled him with a mixture of dread and determination. Shazan's final appeal began to take shape in his mind. He knew he had to emphasize the critical importance of embracing Jesus, not as a matter of religious preference, but as the key to eternal salvation. This truth, he would say, can transform your understanding of faith and open the door to a relationship with the living God. The lasting impact of Shazan's journey was becoming clear. His experience had not only transformed his own life, but held the potential to reshape the spiritual landscape for countless others. As he prepared to share his message with the world, Shazan felt the weight of his responsibility. The truth he had learned in the depths of hell could be a lifeline for those seeking genuine spiritual enlightenment. Shazan's mind turned to the millions of people who, like him, had grown up believing in a different path to salvation. How would they receive this message? Would they be open to considering a truth that challenged everything they had been taught? The task ahead seemed daunting, but Shazan knew he couldn't shy away from it. The urgency of his revelation demanded action, no matter the cost. Shazan's extraordinary journey through the afterlife challenges not just Islamic beliefs, but prompts all viewers to examine their deepest spiritual convictions. His encounter with Muhammad in the depths of hell and the shocking revelations about Jesus shake the foundations of religious understanding. This near-death experience transcends cultural and doctrinal boundaries, inviting everyone to question their assumptions about salvation and eternal destiny. As Shazan's story unfolds, a profound truth emerges. What if our beliefs about eternity are fundamentally flawed? The stakes couldn't be higher. Shazan's message serves as a call to action for viewers to seriously consider the claims of Jesus, regardless of their current beliefs. The time for change is now, Shazan implores. Your eternal destiny hinges on the choices you make today. In a world of competing spiritual narratives, Shazan's account stands as a testament to the power of divine revelation. It challenges us to look beyond our comfortable assumptions and confront the possibility that the truth about eternity might be radically different from what we've always believed. As we contemplate Shazan's journey, we're left with a haunting question. What if everything we thought we knew about salvation is wrong?